Thank you, Lorraine. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet and pay my respects to elders both past and present. To Sir Avi Parbo, Richard Morrow, Hugh Morgan, former Shell Chairman Russell Kaplan, members of the Melbourne Mining Club Executive, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for this opportunity. If I could first address the big elephant in the room, and this magnificent room, I'm not a miner. But that said, the mining and petroleum sectors have both made enormous contributions to Australian prosperity over the decades. And today, both face common issues. We are both importers of foreign capital, exporters of Australian energy. We both face structural high costs, and in an increasingly volatile democracy, we both face significant public questioning of our place in a rapidly evolving economy. Today, I would like to address two topical policy debates that have emerged in the period since the federal election. And both are somewhat emotive, and both have a significant impact in the ability of everyone in this room to either run their business or invest their capital in the resource sector. The first is the often hysterical debate that has surrounded Australian immigration in the new millennium. In particular, the failure of industry to advocate for an immigration program that will provide economic stimulus to a sluggish economy. The second is the topical discussion on energy pricing, with particular reference to the record high gas prices we saw emerge in early July this year. As a Melburnian now living in Perth, returning home always makes me feel somewhat nostalgic. So I seek your indulgence to frame today's conversation with a recent experience. During a recent stay, I decided to go for a walk through the area where I grew up. The walk commenced in Burwood, an area constructed in the years either side of the Second World War. A landscape of simple weatherboard homes that were originally constructed with corrugated iron roofs. Further east, I walked into an area constructed in the late 1940s and 50s. This was a period of increasing Australian prosperity, fuelled by post-war migration, and simple house designs made way to homes with higher levels of architectural interest. Weatherboards remained the dominant construction material for a recovering economy, but simple roof lines were replaced with gables, and corrugated iron made way for terracotta. Here I noticed timber garages that in their day would have stored Australian manufactured motor cars built by migrants that flocked to our cities in search of a better way of life. Crossing Warrigal Road, I walked into an estate constructed in the early 1960s, and here a step change in Australian wealth is obvious. These homes were constructed in the great prosperity that followed Reconstruction. And for the first time in many decades, these homes were built of brick. It struck me that brick is a construction material that's both more expensive and energy intensive. Among these first homes, built as new with access to a natural gas network that made cooking easier and space heating more affordable for families. Further along are increasingly large two-storey homes built in the 1980s. Homes that took advantage of an abundance of building materials, and in a potent symbol of the average Australian's purchasing power, these homes had multi-car garages. It would be easy for us to dismiss these changes in homes and improvements in our standard of living, or explain these changes as simply the result of passing of time. But time changes nothing when it comes to our standard of living. The reason our homes improved and we enjoyed access to affordable energy was because of the choices that we made as a nation. It was the economic boost provided by post-war reconstruction, mass immigration and expansion of our trading base that made it possible for Australians to afford better homes. At the same time, Australia took some brave decisions in the construction of a new economy through building a vibrant manufacturing sector, expanding the mineral export industry, and the construction of both coal-fired electricity generation and oil refining capacity near our major cities. It was only through establishing these new industries and welcoming new Australians that we were able to pay for improved housing. Today, our next economic transition is imminent, and perhaps more than ever, we need to have a mature conversation about the most fundamental pillars of our economy. And what is more fundamental to a nation than who lives in it and the ability of the community to access affordable and reliable energy? Each of the step changes in Australian prosperity that were evident in my walk correspond to a wave of Australian migration. From Curtin's populate or perish mantra of the 1940s to Fraser's brave decision to welcome Vietnamese immigrants in the late 1970s, there was a broad acceptance that to ensure growth across the continent, we needed more people. These decades were typified by the acknowledgement that welcoming new Australians actually made finding a good job easier because of the economic stimulus of population growth. Today, there is no mistake that the two most economically vibrant regions of the Australian economy are the two with the fastest growing populations. In stark contrast to the last decade, where Australian growth was driven by increasing exports of iron ore along with expansion of the coal and LNG sectors, today Australia's economic growth is being driven by Melbourne and Sydney with their diverse economies. These two cities are home to more than half of the nation's population growth, a trend that will catapult both cities to in excess of 8.5 million residents by 2060. But as we strive for a more prosperous Australia, we must increase immigration levels and grow population in other areas of the nation. We must look to the economic potential of our regions and our regional centres. And this is where the mining and petroleum sectors can have a great contribution. As a leader in the resource sector, it is the ability of our industry to make a contribution outside the capitals that excites me most. The legacy of commodity booms is a powerful tool in advocating for industrial expansion in the resource sector. It's evident in this hall, a legacy of the Victorian gold rush, and is tangible in towns like Bendigo, where mining complemented agriculture and created a vibrant regional city with a sustainable population and excellent infrastructure. A legacy that continued long after mining declined. When gold was discovered near Bendigo in 1851, the city was little more than a sheep station. Soon, more than 40,000 miners flocked to the area, including a large number of Asian and European immigrants. This period of the city's history was typified by a desire to create a legacy for future generations, a movement that can still be witnessed in the grand sandstone buildings, many of which have now been repurposed to provide modern services. Today, the Bendigo economy is diverse, with construction, manufacturing and financial services, headlined, of course, by the national headquarters of the Bendigo Bank, contributing more of 40% of the city's gross regional product. As with most diverse economies, we see sustained population growth. In fact, the city is expected to grow by 38% in the next 20 years, growth that will continue nearly 170 years after the discovery of gold. The lesson from Bendigo is that from boom must come legacy, and legacy is only useful when it manifests itself through population growth, infrastructure and economic diversity. Today's challenge is to realise the potential of resource project investments in towns like Gladstone and Broome, to create a legacy for future generations. This will only happen when we grow the population with a mix of internal and international migration to the regions, creating opportunities for new Australians to find well-paid jobs. For investors in regional cities, the advantages are obvious. Access to a well-educated local workforce that will make running our companies both simpler and more profitable. Local communities will benefit from a critical mass in population that will make investment in schools and hospitals irresistible for government. And sustainable population growth, with its associated economic stimulus, will help to silence the vocal critics of our industry. But if we're ever to see the benefits of population growth in our regions, we must first transcend the hysterical tone that now shrouds meaningful debate about immigration. Industry leaders, like so many of you in this room, need to both advocate for a balanced mix of skilled and humanitarian migration, and then back up our advocacy with meaningful decisions that contribute to legacy. These comments are not a call for more or less 457 visa intakes. Specialist tasks in highly technical sectors like ours will always require the temporary importation of specific skills. Nor are they a criticism of FIFO or DIDO arrangements, as individuals will always decide where they want to raise their families. But there are decisions we can all take to contribute to the north of Australia being dotted with prosperous resource towns like Bendigo. One tangible example from my own business comes from the QC LNG project on Curtis Island. Here we've seen an Australian project managed by a foreign multinational, utilising foreign capital, employing Australians, a situation that has been short-sightedly demonised by some political leaders, having a positive impact on the local community. The LNG plant on Curtis Island has 300 Shell employees and permanent contractors, 98% of which are local. The deliberate strategy of the project was to recruit roles as local positions. If you were to visit the site today, you would see more than 100 additional contractors on site completing maintenance tasks. Again, the deliberate strategy was to procure services through contracting firms that employ local workers. This approach has a positive impact for my business by reducing costs and safety risks. But applying an employment framework like this enables industry to make a meaningful contribution to the regions where it operates. Resource workers are amongst the most valuable in our economy, and their spending on local services is a significant contribution to regional economies. Put simply, they bring capital raised in New York and London to the milk bars, shops and restaurants of the Darling Downs and the Pilbara. But local resource employment is only half the equation. To further enrich these regions, they require economic diversity. And it is only through population growth that economic diversity will be delivered, unlocking the huge potential of Australia's north. Regions and cities that fail to grow beyond one-dimensional resource-reliant economies will always fail to withstand the cyclical nature of commodity prices.